Hey, Courtney.
Hello, Heidi again.
Yes, so we're doing something a little bit different. This is still episode 14, but we're doing part 2 because we want to extend what was going on with episode 14. So
I thought my time had run out, so I cut it short.
Yes, so we're doing part 2. So please sit back and enjoy the rest of episode 14.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thanks, Courtney. Enjoy.
So I've done the first stage set for the Grateful Dead, and it was a lovely show. It was my first Grateful Dead show, and of course, I was transported, especially in the instrumental breaks and the drum circles, the drum intervals. I loved all the rhythms and all that stuff, but some of the songs really transported me, and one of the things that, of course, I'd met each individual member of the band, and I had a connection, a different connection, of course, with each band member. Of course, at that time, it was Jerry Garcia, Bobby Weir, Phil Lesh, and Bill Kreutzmann and Pigpen on the keyboards. Mickey Hart actually wasn't back on the scene at that time. He was taking a hiatus, for family reasons that I won't talk about. Anyway, and then he came back on later, and of course he and I became great friends also. So they were all living pretty locally. I was just down the road from Bobby Weir. I'd go to the Rucka Rucka Stud Ranch. Of course, it wasn't about the horses, it was about the guys that lived there, the studs. So that was so named, right? But anyway, it was wonderful hanging on that little ranchette, and horses and the wonderful guys. We all got along so well. Of course, Frankie was always, she was like. She was so amazing, she was all over the place, and she took me around, introduced me to, everybody on the music scene around that Marin County, and there was so many. There's Jesse Colin Young, Quicksilver Messenger Service, Crosby and Stills and Nash were around, and well, there was Sons of Champlin were, they never really hit big time, but they were really good music. And the New Riders of the Purple Sage, of course, are still working. But the Sons of Champlin and the New Riders, locally, when the Grateful Dead played locally, they would always open for them on the, bigger venues. So it transpired that I went ahead and did full stage sets for each of those two bands as well as the Grateful Dead, because it was not a conflict of interest or anything. It was all, part and parcel of the family, a certain, family aspect to that. So, and that's the only people I ever did, just apart from the incredible string band, back in Syracuse. I'd never really done work for other bands. I did personal stuff for other bands, and of course, clothing and family stuff. But stage stuff was exclusive, really, around the Grateful Dead scene. I decided that that's the way it should be. I didn't want to really, make it just, I wanted to make it exclusive or special. And of course, it's as much work as I could really do anyway. And the Grateful Dead organization grew and grew, and there was so many people. Everybody wanted something, and I was doing work in their homes, and as it transpired, as people started to appreciate my work, everybody wanted to have their own personal mandala, and of course I would kind of read auras, look at them and decide, look at the birth chart and decide, what their colors are really, and make something really personal for their homes. And pretty soon everybody in the organization had a big mandala in their homes. And one of my suggestions was, because most people have limited wall space, so I would suggest putting them on the ceiling, especially over a flush light source with a dimmer switch, and just float a frame or just pin it up from the corners and the cardinal points. It would just, the weight of the cloth would just drape underneath the light source and be flush to the ceiling around the perimeter, and it would just, this glowing piece of art with a dimmer switch, if you had one, that you could just like dial it down, for most. And I suggested, well, what's the available ceiling space, that you're going to be looking up at is when you're in bed, so over the bed, so most people had their mandala up over the bed, and as it happened over the years, so many of the Grateful Dead children were born under the mandalas, and they became like the first thing they saw, they're like, and so there's a great familiarity. There's a really homey thing, which was I was just doing it. There was no real agenda or anything, But also, whenever somebody got sick or they had to go to hospital, I'd bring in a mandala, because it would be part of the home scene, that would be like a comfort, like a comforter, right? Anyway, all that wonderful those things, and so. I was really well employed with all these other bands doing stuff for their homes, for their clothing, for not for their stage, and so life went on. It progressed, of course, and on the scene at the time, of course, the Hells Angels were around. And they like to do impromptu security around the Grateful Dead, local scenes anyway. I wasn't on the road with the Grateful Dead at that time. I was a homebody, and but I got to meet a lot of those fellows, and they loved my work. They all wanted T-shirts, because especially under the the black lights and stuff, all the white shows up as this great skeletal structure and stuff like this. They were pretty awesome, and plus there's a lot of imagery, like stuff, and so I got to hang with a bunch of those guys, great guys, whatever there's stuff with those organizations, and they became more and more hardcore business. But back in those early days, especially in the Bay Area, they're more fun-loving. Not that they're not fun-loving now. They love to have fun, but there's more strictures about business, and it's a tougher scene, and they're much more highly prosecuted and all that stuff. So. But anyway, I got to enjoy their company as well, which was interesting. And having hung with the motorcycle club back in Syracuse, and I was comfortable around the the biker scene, and so as time went along, Frankie found a home for her and Bobby. And actually Rex, he went as part of the company to their new home in Forest Knolls, which was really only about 3 miles as the crow flies across the ridge down to Forest Knolls, and they found a nice little home, and they left the Rucka Rucka Stud Ranch. Well, Geraldine Brandelius, who has written, produced a beautiful photographic memoir of the Grateful Dead, and she's been a really strong part of the scene and family. through those days, and one of my earliest friends there on the scene, and now she's, regretfully passed on. But so she was around, on the scene at the Rucka Rucka, and she kind of took over the ranch when Frankie and Bobby went to Forest Knolls and Rex and all the rest of the crew. I mean, there's Pigpen was sleeping in the milk shed. there was all these crew members and band members that were just like, drop. It was the Grateful Dead ranch at the time, and then Mickey, meanwhile, had developed his spread, which is kind of a ranch, in out towards Novato. That a later friend of mine that I partnered up with, her and her mother had found this ranch for him when they were on the road, because he needed to find a place, and he'd left it with them to find him a place, and they found this really nice property. And so anyway, there was a Rucka Rucka, and then there was Mickey Hart's spread. And so anyway, as it transpired, I ended up inheriting the Rucka Rucka Studge Ranch. Geraldine moved on to somewhere else, and I moved into the Rucka Rucka, gave up the place at the Kelly Ranch, and they remained really good friends of mine. Of course, they were wonderful people, and then one of the things that I inherited, upon moving into the Grateful Dead Ranch, the Rucka Rucka Stud Ranch, was people, learning about this home base kind of place and coming across the country, to find it, bringing all of these designer psychedelics to give to the band. Yeah, right? And, there was me. So I was like, yes, no, they're not here right now, but I can screen everything for them. So what I know. Anyway, so I would host these individuals as they come around, their ones and twos, and they would leave a stash of psychedelics. They were basically experiments in psychedelia, and most of them, actually all of them, were great. I never had a bad experience. But I said, "Oh, I'll screen them for you and see if I want to pass them on to the band." Like, yeah, give them me. Anyway, they were just psychedelics. I mean, nothing heavy, right? I had a great time, but for the most part, everything was wonderful. They were designer drugs, and I got to be one of the early recipients of pretty much all of the great designer drugs that ever came down the pike, and most of them were just great, and I just go, hand them on, and say what was my experience with them was, not that I'm promoting them or anything. I'm not making any money on it or anything like that. I'm just sharing the joy, right? So that was one of the things that was interesting about being at that ranch, so also, of course, it was 15 acres or so. I'd go up the hillside and I found a little spring that came out way up there on the hillside. And that was, you could grow stuff up there, so I grew a few plants. But nobody could see them, it was way up there. It was hidden, it was just a little trickle of water. But it was surrounded by poison oak, I was like, I'm itching everywhere. But poison oak is, it's, that itching is tenacious. You can't just, it's so itchy, you can't just really ignore it. But if you irritate it, it's just going to spread and get worse. And pretty soon you're going to be, on, heavy medication and hospitalized, whatever, So I learned that if you cannot touch it, it would go away like in 5 days. You know, it would start to blister and then it would just like go away. You know, and as you got more and more of these, brushes with it, you kind of develop a bit of an immunity. So that's the way I dealt with it. I didn't completely get immune to poison oak, but I got so that it didn't really bother me. I could deal with it. But that little aside, really. But you wouldn't want to be caught out, using it for toilet paper. So anyway, things are coalescing. The band is getting more popular. They're more in demand, more famous. They produced 2 wonderful albums, and they're working on another, and they're preparing for their tours, and I'm really the homebody. So it's not like I'm going to be on the road with them at that time. I'm not. I have no intention. I'm not looking. I wouldn't want to be. I couldn't really do my art on the road. So, and I had so much work at home. But one of the people that I met really early on that showed up at the Rucka Rucka was this fellow called Roger Lewis. Now, Roger Lewis used to be a whiz kid on Wall Street. He was a trader. He was from a wealthy family, and they bought him a seat on the stock exchange. And he and this fellow friend of his, Ron Rakow, were both Wall Street traders. And then I guess they they dropped acid and dropped out of the scene. They both ended up on the Grateful Dead scene. So Roger showed up at I had met. Oh, right. So there's this episode that I'm in my little cabin with 2 trees, growing through the house, and I'm meditating, and I'm thinking, well, I can't really relate to all of these, guys on the scene here, because I'm like an enigma. I'm just so far from the mundane. I was, I was like in these heavenly realms in my consciousness, and I had a job just speaking ordinary language with anybody really, and I would have a daily meditation after my yoga session, and I was meditation. And I'm thinking, well, I really need to get grounded here. I just can't. I'm so. I'm like, I really can't relate. I'm an enigma to these people, and it would behoove me to, get a little more down to earth and be able to, converse, and be on a practical level. So I decide, well, what's the quickest way to get grounded? I said, well, probably to get laid, I've been on this not getting laid. What was that? For my spiritual, development. And so I said, well, I probably, need to get grounded, and probably getting laid would probably be the quickest way to get grounded. So I get up from my meditation, and I'm like, okay, then, well, there's a knock at the door. I'm living in the middle of nowhere. I'm in the woods, and I open the door, and there's a beautiful young lady there. And I said, well, hello. And she said, well, hello. I said, well, come on in. I guess you came to spend the night. As you think, so it be. And she went, well, maybe, and I was like, and of course she spent the night, and I got grounded. I sure as hell did. So it was absolutely blissful. And I get up in the morning, I'm, and then she has to go and, deal with life and stuff, and I have to get on with my day. and something, she said something, and I said no, and it's like no, yeah. And then there was a little exchange, and suddenly, for the first time in years, I'm like irritated. I'm irritated. I was like crashed down to earth, Earth to Courtney. You're down in the, in the shit now. You're gonna have to remember how to deal with it. You've been up in the heavens for so long, And I'm like, I crashed hard, from getting grounded, But it went on for a long time, I was coming down by stratospheres, by degrees, It was like I didn't realize I could walk through the rain and not get wet because I would decide not to. I would walk from, the mile down the road to visit Frankie, and in the rain, I walk in, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know, you have a car?" I said, "No, I just walked." She said, "But you're dry." I said, "Oh, yeah, right." And she was like, "No, what do you mean? Somebody give you a ride?" And I said, "No, I just walked." And she said, "What do you, come on." And I said, "No, she said, how do you not be wet?" And I said, "Well, I just create a little force field around me." I was living my own dream. So getting grounded was, all important, of course, for getting on with life and stuff like that. But it didn't really help my spirituality that much. But at the same time, I don't regret a moment of it. Anyway, so she introduced me to this fellow, Roger Lewis. Roger Lewis introduced me to this guy, Dennis Kelly. Dennis Kelly created the little window pane LSD called Clearlight, and it was until then I only had Orange Sunshine, but that was like amazing. They were like tiny little 1/8-inch squares of window pane. You could see through them. There was like nothing, right? They were like 100, 200 mics a piece. I take a couple of them. That's a lot. And I just higher than a kite, on this. I go off into the hills and have these amazing experiences. And so Dennis and so I would trade a mandala with him for 1,000 hits of Clearlight. And they came in a sachet, and there would be 10 100 hit sachets in a 1,000 hit sachet. I'm sashaying through the life. Anyway, so Roger Lewis was instrumental in introducing me to Dennis Kelly. Roger and I became great friends, and he introduced me to Ron Rakow, who later on, took over Grateful Dead Enterprises, and we shared house together in a few different locations, and there's a whole other story.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtney.
Oh, thank you, Heidi.
I think that wraps up episode 14.
Thanks very much.
Guys. We'll see you again soon.
Right.
And remember, like and subscribe.